Hardly. Can you hear me? Now.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. Oh, I love that.
You don't have to stand up. Here.
I'll wait for you after.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. It's on. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Special thanks to our son Dan, who arrived suddenly and unexpectedly 3 hours ago from Whidbey Island. Heaven on earth. Maybe not in his view at the moment. And thank you also, Ann Scott, so much for getting all this going in the program committee. I do appreciate that. And thank you especially for the good spirit who ushers us from light into dark into light again, Joe Panero. So grateful to him and for the time he spent with Helen in the labyrinths of the computer. You will see the result. I haven't seen it all. This is a true story. I got a phone call a couple of days ago from our most unwelcome caller, Comcast. And there was a lady in Pennsylvania with a lovely Afro-American Appalachian dialect. And she was so happy to talk to me. And she heard Helen practicing in the other room. And she says to me, "Was that summertime I hear it in the background?" And I said, "Yes, it was." Says the voice from Comcast. I said, "This is true. I wept every time I heard it. And I wake up singing that every day." It was, well, I have summertime every day with Helen practicing in the mornings. And that's a delight too, on her beautiful instrument. And I won't interfere any further with Helen's autobiography in music. You're here to hear her tell her own life story in music. And I do encourage you, after it's all over, to feel free to ask as many questions as you like. So thank you very much. Helen, is it?
I'm afraid it was somewhere over the rainbow, not summertime. So if you're waiting for summertime, I don't play it tonight.
They sounded the same.
They must sound the same to the lady in West Virginia. Concert at a friend's house in March. How did I get to that point? This is to sum up the story. How did it all begin? When I was very small, my mother sang a lot of nursery rhymes with me, like hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. Sing it with me. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock, tick-tock. She also sat at the piano and played different notes and might say, "Which of these two notes is higher? Tell me, the first or the second?" Second. We'll do another. almost the same, aren't they? They're both D's. After a while, she got pretty complicated. She would play one note and say, "Do you know what this one is?" And pretty soon, because I tuned my violin to A, I began to recognize A and the other open strings. This may be one reason I have perfect pitch, all this playing. Also, my father played the piano. He played for silent movies, and so he had a repertoire of wonderful music, which delighted a child. I might hear something like this. Or I might hear. And Indians would be dancing all around the world. Or maybe March from a War. All kinds of things would come from Dad and Mom at the piano. So my background right from the beginning was rich. Next. When I was about 6, I grew into a curious reader, and here I am reading from Compton's Encyclopedia, which is the business my father became president of, so it was part of our family life. And there were stories in the volumes, not just facts. After a short stint with piano lessons, my wish to have a violin came true. My parents must have had great tolerance. The beginning sounds are pretty wobbly. But they become a little more tolerable. And pretty soon I was playing. I see some other Suzuki. Before long, I knew enough notes to step up to the major for the Christmas program at the elementary school. My contribution to baby Jesus in the manger was, in simple beginning violin style, you sing it with me. My life in those days in Glencoe, Illinois, was pretty rich, with school, lessons, a new sister and brothers, occasional trips to Chicago, just 20 miles away. Mother took us to museums and concerts. I was thoroughly impressed by the romantic violinist Fritz Kreisler. Here's a piece by Franz Lehar, which Kreisler adapted and often played. You may have heard it. music orchestra for New Trier Township High School. We played Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. This is the Pirates of Penzance. And there's Helen Neumeyer. We also played concerts. Here's a little bit of Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, the first violin part. Sometimes the first violins had melody, sometimes they had background. And here, after the cellos have had it, after many hours of practice and rehearsals came the big senior recital. I played, among other things, a Bach concerto. In retrospect, that seems like a lot of flowers for two little girls. On to Mills College, 3 days and 2 nights away by train. A trip I made 4 times a year for 5 years.
Oh.
In my music courses, I studied harmony, orchestration, madrigals, and sang in the Mills choir. And I directed a Christmas chorus in my dormitory. I practiced violin in my private practice room, looking out over eucalyptus and sage. I worked on all kinds of things. For example, I worked on bowing techniques, working in the frog of the bow. Or in the middle. Or at the tip. Or slurring different notes. Or dotted rhythm. Or staccato. Or any number of things. The bow is only one part. With the violin, there are also pitches. There are these 4 established pitches: the G, D, A, and E. But in between, where you put your fingers, there are infinite possibilities. And it takes some practice. Next. After picking up a couple of teaching credentials, I turned to the next step that many wives of graduate students in the 50s did at Cal. I taught 2nd grade.
Wait, those come first, Don. Molnar comes
Where's those
first.
kids?
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
I'm still at Mills. I was inspired by Ferenc Molnar. He came once a week from San Francisco to coach our chamber music group. Let's find it. During the 40s, Molnar had been a prisoner in a Hungarian internment camp, and when a man above him, in the bunk above him, died, Molnar took the slats of that bed and fashioned a violin, a flute violin, but one good enough that he could play, and with it he earned his keep all across Europe and to America, and gradually became lead violist in the San Francisco Symphony and taught us at Mills. He showed us things that have been important to me all my life. He showed us that the opening of a piece of music may be pregnant with ideas that are developed later. He also emphasized how musical measures need to flow into meaningful phrases, just the way words do. And this was important to me all my life in literature and writing, in every aspect. A single word does not mean much. A single musical measure doesn't mean much. Here's a bit from a Mozart. I'll play it measure by measure. Now you may hear unmusical people playing that way. If you know how music should mean or words should mean, you make a phrase. And it may start softly, it may grow, it may start loud and drop down. It'll have character and meaning. And in this quartet, this Mozart quartet, the first violin has it, and every other instrument has it, so it's important that all of them learn the same method of speaking and get the same meaning. The French composer Darius Milhaud was another extraordinary teacher at Mills. He taught alternate years in Paris and at Mills. His music was strongly influenced by Brazilian and jazz rhythms, and was important in the contemporary musical world. Without piano or orchestra, I can't really show the lively, rich, dissonant, rhythmic character. But a few bars from his early household muse for piano will give you a taste. Listen for the rhythm and for the dissonance. I'm going to start again. And here's one, this is a little volume of music that might be heard around an ordinary house. Here's a lazy cat. This is an image of Leo, which he autographed for me, to Helen with my best wishes. There were just 3 of us in our class, and because he was not well, we often met at his house. We sat on the piano bench with him and played our humble orchestrations and compositions, set them before him, and he played them After leaving his house, we might meet at the door luncheon guests who were about to come or coming, and one day it was Stravinsky. The last few times we went to Paris, we'd visit with Milhaud's son, Daniel, who's an artist at the moment working with neon. He was a childhood playmate of Peter's. Now we're back to the second grade. After picking up a couple of teaching credentials, I turned to the next step, which many Cal wives, graduate students' wives, did at Cal and taught second grade. There's a lot of energy pent up in those 7-year-olds. I had to work fast and furiously and with a lot of focus, using, not yet, using action songs like when we were studying boats. Yo hee ho, yo hee ho, or you know this one. This old man, he played one, he played knick-knack on my thumb with a knick-knack, patty whack, this old man came rolling home. When you get them all doing all of that, it's easier to go back to arithmetic. In 1963, we were at Harvard. I stood in a circle with other newcomers' wives as the president's wife, Mrs. Pusey, introduced herself and then asked each one around the room to meet others with like interests. So we crossed the room, and in my case, I was looking for other instrument players. My musical life was launched. There followed quartets to play in, a madrigal group. One of my favorites was Come Again, Sweet Love. The voice of an 80-year-old has cracked, as some of you know. But I'll try to sing. This was a dialogue between voices, and there is a pun, sexy pun with come and die. I'll try. The other voices have sung, and the soprano is answering. They have sung to see, and the soprano at a different range sings to see, to hear, to weep, touch, to kiss, to die, with endless pain in sweetest sympathy. And the second verse, I sit, I sigh, I weep, I faint, I die, in endless pain and endless sympathy. Only it was supposed to be misery. Okay, let's see what's next. Also at Harvard, there was a summer program for 5th graders in the largely black Roxbury section of Boston. Peter and I taught there, developing a program built around the old English legend of Beowulf. For that, we read, dramatically made costumes and puppets with my sewing machine, added art and music. Here is my friend, Cephas Henry Baskerville, who's trying out my violin. After 7 years, we moved on to the State University of New York at Stony Brook, where also my days were full, with 3 lively boys, one of whom just arrived at 4 o'clock today, to my surprise, and a busy English professor. Together we helped found an environmental center, went fishing and water skiing off the boat, dug clams in the creek at the end of the street, played soccer on Sunday afternoons with other families. I took advantage of a 2-year training program given by 2 Hungarian scholars in the music teaching methods of the composer Karl Orff and Zoltan Kodály, which became the basis of my teaching for the next many years. Also, for 5 years, I was the music teacher at an elementary school in Hauppauge, Long Island. I pushed a cart full of drums, balls, songbooks, records, puppets, charts, from room to room. The cart was longer than Mingus. And also, I directed assemblies and chorus programs. Next. In my adult life, I played in various ensembles. This is one with piano or harpsichord, recorders, drums, whatever, and strings. We played in various art galleries and museums, often on Sunday afternoon. At Christmas time, we really came alive with 3 other families from our Sunday afternoon soccer league. We put on Christmas extravaganzas. We chose a Bible story. We read through many picture book versions and then created our own plot. We met November and December weekends to practice being animals for Noah's Ark, little children of all ages, hopping and riding monkeys and elephants, and whatever animals would come onto the ark. Or shepherds for the Joseph's coat one, or lions for Daniel in the lion's den. And then we painted and sewed and constructed props. We practiced on recorders and drums, the simple tunes I composed. Here's one that I found in an old folder. I don't know. I think the first was letting Daniel out of the lion's den. It was supposed to sound like horns. And this other scrap, I think, was a royal procession. I forgot to write down exactly what it was, but I remember we used it. By Christmas Eve, we had a production which drew grandparents from afar and almost eclipsed the importance of Santa Claus himself. Now, in my mid-80s, I can better appreciate the love and energy which those grandparents expended. They came in their holiday finery. The rest of us who were acting in the play were in our burlap or whatever costumes, homemade crowns and all of that, but our parents really dressed up. This is my father putting his animal into the ark. Each one of us made a stuffed animal, one different kind, and during the performance we loaded them all into the ark. Next, and my mother and my friend's mother took their animals, mother is just finished, putting their animals in the ark. It was a wonderful occasion, each one of those plays. After 7 more years, we moved to West Virginia. I had the good fortune to replace a professor on leave in the music department for just 1 year. That was so exciting. I dove into the coursework for a PhD. I also taught children in a special program based on the methods of the German composer Karl Orff, whose work I had studied at Stony Brook. Fortunately, the university owned a large collection of the beautiful wooden instruments which Orff had developed. For example, wooden xylophones with removable bars, so a child could put down 2 bars. So in me, you know, a lot of you grew up with the solfège system of training music. Well, anyway, the child had so, me, and with his nice nice mallet on this beautiful xylophone with a rich tone could play, rain, rain, go away, come again another day, without any mistakes. We joined with the other instruments, different gongs and drums and claves and all kinds, everybody doing different rhythms that fit, so that very soon we had a full orchestral sound with 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds. It was a very happy, exciting way to teach music and combine singing, playing, and improvisation. I enjoyed also learning Appalachian melodies that were still played in the hollers of West Virginia. That was Go to the Devil and Shake Yourself. This is Kentucky Wine. I also played in the University Orchestra. Here's an excerpt from the first violin part of the Brahms First Symphony. I also played with my mother when we got together. She played the cello, the piano, and sang. She played the cello and sang when we were young. Smoking destroyed her voice. And the piano, shyly. On to San Diego in 1978, where between teaching jobs at surrounding universities, I enjoyed weekly a quartet in my living room. That fellow was named Casal and played with me for 15 years. And there were many visiting musical friends. Next, Louise from New York with her flute. Next, a duet with my middle son, Christopher. Next, this is my friend George, who married my college roommate, with whom I played this Beethoven sonata. The violin became my way of contributing my own voice to major passages of life. At my mother's funeral, while my siblings spoke, I played a piece my mother had loved to play on her cello, The Swan by Saint-Saëns. This is a tough one. Because if your hands are not perfectly steady, it can sound like Jack Benny. I think I will stop there. Also, with the violin, I could help my oldest son, Zach, and his bride, Amy, down the garden path to the altar, which in this case was an organ, which had been moved under an apple tree. This is what I played, one of the things I played for them. They're still married. After 18 years in San Diego, many musical friends gathered and gave me a goodbye party. An afternoon of quartets, a celebratory dinner, and all joining after dinner to play a Bach Brandenburg. There are many more around here.
Hairs are getting grayer.
Oh. Now in 1998, we're in Kensington, next to Berkeley, only an hour and a quarter from Santa Rosa, which I'll be going to tomorrow morning. Even before we were fully unpacked, three of us made music amidst the moving cartons. And then shortly after, our youngest son, Daniel Patrick Neumeyer, had a wedding in Bolinas and asked me to play. I played with two of his exotic friends. Just beyond the trees was a drop to the ocean, and in that thin silk dress, I could feel the cold summer fog. This is one of the lively pieces I played for them as they approached through the trees to the altar, which was a cut-off, giant tree cut off. A few years later, our middle son also asked his mother to play for his wedding in Tilden Park this time. I played with Peter's cousin Elizabeth and tried to sound like a flute so we would be very harmonious. we played, this pavane. Even without weddings, I made music. Soon a regular quartet came weekly to our living room. The Kensington Quartet. Some of those will be up here when we play in Friend's house. The violist, I guess just the violist will be up here. Grandchildren visiting headed for the piano and grandma. This is Joseph. And here is Emily, Robbie, and Helen playing a trio. Playing and singing, I see Robbie with. Here's Emily and Grandma. Here I'm playing Go Tell Aunt Rhody. You know it. Sing it with me. Go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, you don't pray to sister. Dies in the morning, the goblins are crying, the goblins are crying, because their money's dead. Oh, said Emily, that's such a sad song.
Yeah.
Can't we play something happy, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow? Okay, Grandma does what she's asked. When Emily became more advanced, the quartet joined her for a piece. My most memorable musical event in the recent past was on a cold winter night going to an Alvin Ailey dance performance in Berkeley's large Zellerbach Hall. Since one of you, and I don't even see her here tonight, since one of you twice asked that I retell it, I will. I was sitting innocently in row 7 when all of the black male Alvin Ailey dancers in black tuxedo and hats came down in the audience to select partners. The elegant lead dancer took me by the hand and led me onto the stage, where others were already dancing to lively music. In spite of my awkwardly bandaged wounded leg and clunky shoes, I twirled with abandon, and with all the old dance moves, I don't know where they came from, but I twirled and twirled for quite a while but he scooped me up and danced me through an aisle that the other dancers had made, and then touched me so tightly against his chest that I couldn't see. When he let go, he fell back. I saw all the other male dancers lying flat, expressionless, other audience partners were gone. Suddenly, in the spotlight, I collected my wits, quickly curtsied to all, and scooted out through the side curtain. I was met by rousing applause from the audience. I still can't believe it happened. Not all our dancing was performed on major stages. There was dancing at home. One day, Peter had scheduled to walk in Tilden with his old friends George Grun and Jim Goodwin, whom some of you will remember. But it rained buckets that afternoon. To save the day, I invited them to tea instead. The living room floor was still cleared from the 50th anniversary party the night before. When our friends arrived, I said, "We don't need to skip exercise altogether." I put on Pete Seeger's record. All around the kitchen, howdy-doody-doody-doo. All around the kitchen, howdy-doody-doody-doo. Now you do just so, howdy-doody-doody-doo. Let your left foot slip, howdy-doody-doo. And we went. George, an old Viennese-born judge, couldn't believe it. But Jim, who was both an actor and a dancer at heart, engaged in the improvisation with his whole being. Now I'm beginning to make music in Santa Rosa. First at a friend's house with Lee Hauser. And Jim and George Sackman. And I have bi-monthly rehearsals with a Berkeley quartet and new music friends in Occidental and Sebastopol, and the Santa Rosa Junior College Orchestra, which rehearses every Monday night for concerts. Here we are in the last concert. The next one is in the middle of March. We're working on Borodin. Here are excerpts from the first violin part, which sometimes has melody and sometimes has, well, one time 17 measures straight of a very difficult saltando bowing technique, which I have not yet mastered. Here's the melody. All this necessitates hours of practice. Perhaps you will hear this tune from a program with other pieces by Haydn and Dvorak and others. If you come here to the library Sunday afternoon, March 20th, when my Berkeley Quartet will come to play.
bottom of where you put your chin, it looks different from other people's violins.
It's hard, there's quite a space
Yeah.
here, and the violin is under this way.
Uh-huh.
There's a chin rest,
Uh-huh.
and there are all kinds, that's the kind that suits me.
Yeah, it's really massive.
It is.
Sometimes it's a kitchen towel.
What?
Sometimes it's a kitchen towel.
Oh, if I
When you're
leave it at
playing with
home.
George Basie.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Now, Helen, there's one thing that I missed, and that was the point at which you changed your status from single to married. You made no mention of that
Oh, well,
event. I know it's not musical. Or is it?
this is why I like the music, and I went to tea at my art history professor's house. He also had a son who had been told there would never be any Mills girls at the house when he visited from Cal. And we stayed too late, and he came home to dinner, and there he was.
That's it.
One of those inevitable
But what happened to the music?
music. There was wedding music, and my violin teacher played. She made safely graze in our living room, on our piano as I came down the stairs to mantle for where you were standing. Yes. That was in 1952.
That little episode of your life where you were in a lookout tower for fire, and then you got a present at one
There was
time.
music there too. Maybe you heard that story. We spent one summer on Spades Mountain in Idaho on a forest lookout, and our job was every hour for one of us to go up and on the alidade all around to see if there were fires. Peter took things to read. I took my violin and practiced with the whole world around. Yes, that involved music too.
Ellen, I have to say, that's the most remarkable presentation. You must have spent hours putting that together and practicing, and it's just wonderful.
Thank you.
Very unique.
I would have spent more, but we had some emergency room activity with us. And other things take, as you all know, life goes on and you never know what's next. But it was a delight to prepare this for my friends here.
And it was such, Helen, I wanted to say it was so much a delight to hear you. And I have this weird thought. I bet your mother was so proud of you. I hope she was.
I hope you all go home singing and whistling. My sister?
Your siblings.
It's called Dancing Woman by Barlock, German, which I've loved and had in my room always. I love the spirit. Dancing Woman. And
Helen, did you say something about that beautiful image at the end?
oh, I just did.
Go to
It's a statue by Barlock. Is he German?
1920.
1920, called Dancing Woman. We saw it in Germany, and I've had that picture of a nice, better image than this in my room always. It's an inspiration to me. The spirit of it.